Hello everyone, and today I'll be reading a Matrix Listener in an alternate universe where YN is a barista and he's a CEO. So let's get into it. Working as a barista was a really tiring thing, especially taking the early morning shift. You used to take the night one, but since you switched to having two part-time jobs and your other job would be at night, you had to actually take the morning one. And it was just a whole other story. Grumpy customers in the morning, and you looked like they wanted to die. You did too sometimes when you woke up at 6 in the morning, in the cold morning, having to walk all the way to your job. It was quite close to your home, fortunately, and having to open it and stand there for hours. Sometimes it was pretty fun when it was quiet, until they all trickled in at the early hour of 8 a.m. You'd always wondered why being a barista was so glorified in fanfics and why it was seen as such a fun job, when in reality, it was the most boring thing ever, or so you thought, until you had met a particularly interesting customer. You were never really paid enough to care, and that was something you would always know to be true, until this man, in a suit, came over to order something, and it was like there was something magical about him. Maybe his dreamy eyes, or the way his hair was down to his back, and it was cyan too. Well, he was certainly very stylish, and very pretty too. He had a beautiful face, a long figure, and his perfume was something else. He probably could not even remember the brand, and you knew he would never be able to afford it, even with a month's wage. So, he probably should not overthink it too much. And yet, you had to ask him to repeat his order twice, since it all went over your head, while you were staring at him. Come again, please? You say, embarrassment taking over your entire soul. But he seemed rather forgiving and patient, as he repeated his order. And then, when it came to the point where he had to tip you, he tipped twice the amount that he actually paid for the latte. Sir, are you sure this is not a mistake? No, it's not. It's what I wanted to pay. Sir, that's a 200% tip. Are you really sure about that? I mean, is something wrong? You tell him. Because you're not really sure he's fully awake to be doing this. He's rich, yes, but most rich people who came to the cafe that you worked at never really cared to tip that much. And yet, he nodded again. Please do not worry about it. I know how I'm spending my money, he said. He seemed to be very curt with his replies, which made your heart ache a little bit, as you could only wish to hear his voice a little bit longer. Really, could it be that hard? Well, maybe it was. For someone as beautiful as him, everything must be quite hard, but so many people wanted it of you. You were quite dreamy this morning. You really had to wake up from whatever spell you had put you under. You knew that. But he nodded, took the tip, and gave him the latte soon enough. Muichiro. That was the name that you wrote on his cup. And that was a name that would frequently come into your mind as you thought about him. And you never thought you'd really see him again. Until it happened the next morning. And then the next. And then the next too. And he became a regular. The two of you barely talked, but the tips that he kept giving you only went up higher and higher. And that's when you knew you really had to talk it out with him. That's why you took off your apron and told your friend to take over for you for just a moment while you went to his table. Muichiro, right? Yes, that's me. Is something wrong? He asked. tilting his head at you, and you shook your head. No, there really isn't, but I need to talk to you. Is there anything you want from me? I mean, it's pretty abnormal what you do. Paying all that money just for a latte. I'm sure you could do with a 20% tip sometime. Not that I'm minding the money or something, but you know what I'm asking. Are you trying to... I don't know. You probably get it, don't you? And he tilted his head even more. He looked like a lost puppy, and it was adorable. And also, it made it very clear that he had no clue what you were trying to ask, and erased all of your worries, too. I really have no idea what you're trying to tell me, Miss Moyan. If that's correct, I'm just doing what I can. I usually do this to every place I go to, and didn't that just make him instantly hotter in your eyes? Paying all that money? He looked quite young too, only in his 20s. So where was it all coming from? He didn't care. He mostly cared that he was willing to spend it. How kind he was, and quite nonchalant about it too. Very humble. So, you leaned forward and smiled. Well, Can I ask you something then? He nodded, completely honest with you. He's quite curious. You seem to have learned and observed. Could I please have your number instead of a tip this time? And he blushes. What? You know what I said? I really need your number. I mean, you're really good looking, and you're really nice too, and I think maybe we should go on a date. That would seem very fun. You tell him, blushing brightly, and hoping he does not reject you on the spot. That was a very bold move, considering the two of you barely even talked, and all he's done was tip you a couple of times. What if he thinks you're a money digger now? It certainly was not what you had in mind when you said this. But surprisingly, he smiles. Well, if you're willing to try, I don't mind, he said, seemingly quite shy now. But he leaned forward and held your hand gently, squeezing it. But don't call me sir from now on. All right then. Muichiro, are you free tonight? Yes, I may be. I'll make sure of it. All right then. Call me. And when I'm done with my shift, it should be in an hour or two, I'll tell you of a place. Just go there, and we'll meet up. Okay, I can do that. I'll see you later then. And that's how you ended up meeting at a restaurant. One where your friend worked at. She told you she'd make it special. You trusted her, and hoped that everything would work in your favor in the end. You wore the best that you could, and hoped to catch his attention, or at least look quite decent. After all, he was very formal with the way he dressed, and you hoped you could match. Or at least be not looking so out of place next to him. You certainly did not want that if you were going to date for a while now. Or maybe going to stay together. But that feels very far into your realm of dreams. He comes right on time, and you're already waiting at your table, smiling and waving at him as he walks over. But as you get up to shake his hand, he takes it and leans down, kissing the back of your palm, before holding the chair out for you to sit in. I'm not really good at this, but please, let me take care of you for tonight, he said. His voice was soft and sweet, like honey in your ears, and you had to doubt him, because how come he was not good at this? He was better than anyone you've ever met. You really had to tell him that. And yet, you were too mesmerized to say a word. So you just nodded and hoped that your thoughts would be understood. And it was the best night you've ever spent. You learned that he was a CEO, and he had inherited his family's wealth after they died, and been taking care of their company ever since. You couldn't help but admire his determination to take care of his father's assets, and the company that he left behind, and uphold the family name. It may seem a little bit too classic and boring, but the way he spoke about it with such conviction, and how it seemed to matter to him dearly in a way that was so unrelated to all that what rich people talked about money and class and all of those boring stuff. He seemed to have a real reason to want this. His family. He simply did not want to throw away what they built, and you could admire that. And, I'm just a simple girl, working as a barista. Nothing to talk about, and surely nothing of interest. I think not. Your job is very admirable, perhaps even more than mine. You take care of people, and really, if I don't have my coffee in the morning, I think it would ruin my day. You're a lifesaver, Wyan. He chuckled, and then he took your arm as the two of you got up to a dance. He put an arm around your waist, the two of you dancing to the music, his eyes only looking at yours, and it seemed to be looking through you, but there was that soft smile on his face, and you couldn't help but lean your head on his chest and hope you could stay there forever. But nothing ever lasts, and soon the night had ended, and he was heading to his car, opening the door for you and waiting for you to get in. Wyan, could I ask you something? Of course. Go ahead. Would you like to do this again? He murmured, blushing a little bit, but he seemed determined to ask this, and your heart was jumping up and down in your chest because it seemed like you were not the only one who wanted this again. Of course. I mean, this was the best night I've ever spent out with someone, and it was with you. So really, all that you're saying about being inexperienced, I think you're better than anyone I've ever met, Muichiro. I'm more than glad to hear that. So if we're going to continue dating, can I do something else? You nodded, and he leaned in, cupping your face in his hand, and pressed a soft kiss to your cheek. Perhaps your heart had hoped for something more, but you would definitely call this a start.